Leftist radicals have stolen our election. Big tech tyrants have censored our voices. And the CCP unleashed a virus to take over America and the world. But 80 million plus Americans won't back down. We won't relent, and we won't comply. Welcome to the Counterintelligence Center of America's Second Revolution. Here's your Director of Intel, America's favorite bald badass, Josh Bernstein.
So in my opinion, once they all got together and they tried to install Hillary Clinton and it failed, and then they were quote unquote stuck with President Trump, they decided to frame him, right? That's when they spied on the campaign. That's when they were doing all these things. That's when they were planting fake evidence, the Russia hoax, the Ukraine hoax, all the different things, the impeachments, all of those things. But they got caught. They got caught from alternative media like myself, like Breitbart, like the Gateway Pundit, like, you know, John Solomon, like so many other great patriots that said, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. And through FOIA requests and investigations and depositions and all of those wonderful things, we were able to find out who the culprits were, and therefore they got caught. So, when they knew that they were caught, they could face arrests, they could face prosecutions in a second President Trump term. So, they knew that they needed to put a plan together to protect their own hides. And at all costs, that would include keeping President Trump out of the White House for a second term. So with a roaring economy, leadership on the geopolitical scale, and of course the American people working and flourishing like never before in history, they knew that this president was going to cruise to re-election victory. So they needed to take drastic measures, and drastic measures they took. They called on China, who shared in their mutual hatred and disgust for Donald Trump. The American establishment then in Washington coordinated efforts with China to steal the election. China then released the virus, knowing full well that it would destroy the United States economy, and with it, in their hopes, President Trump's re-election chances. But President Trump's economy was so strong and so resilient because of all of the incredible things that he did and put in place to make it that strong, that they quickly recovered, America quickly recovered from the complete shutdown of the economy. However, President Trump's worst mistake he's ever made in his entire political career was shutting down the economy. Okay, I've said that on numerous occasions. He could have told people, you know what? Continue doing what you're doing, continue to work, continue to go about your business. If you're over 60 years old, perhaps you want to stay home for a few weeks. Move along, that's the end of it. But that's not what happened, because there was a full court pressure from the media, from big tech, from Dr. Fauci, from the health community, from everything, telling him what? Bad information. Shut down the economy. And unfortunately, in his limited capacity as far as having political experience, he listened to many of the wrong people, and he did what they told him to do, and that's unfortunate. But again, this is when desperation and sloppiness, let's add that to the mix, sloppiness set in, and the color revolution began. Because once they recovered from the economy being so strong, all of a sudden, the American people understood that it was China's doing, not President Trump's doing, and he was going to cruise to re-election. So they needed Plan B. And the color revolution is something that the intel communities and the CIA have been doing for many, many decades, where they go into a country and they change their government. They do messaging, they do media, they do different things, and they change their government to the people that they want. So the color revolution basically said, well, hell, instead of doing it in other countries, why don't we just do it here? And that's what happened. And if you read the Time magazine article that they put out months ago, it even talks about most of this stuff. Okay? So the color revolution began here in the United States. This is when the Washington elites started to coordinate with the media prostitute whores, the big tech scumbags, the judiciary, the governors, the secretaries of states, the attorney generals, the U.S. attorney generals, perhaps even, probably, and more likely, the vice president at the time, Mike Pence. And, of course, they all coordinated with Republicans. That's right. I've said this on numerous occasions. This never could have been done without the help of Republicans. And those never Trump establishment Republicans were in on this. They were part of the steal. They put this all together to get rid of President Trump. Why? Because he's not one of them. He's one of us. But as grand as their plans were, they still needed China's help. And China, seeing the weakness of the American establishment politicians and the desperation on their faces, and of course, let's not forget their future controllability, which we are now seeing, of the DC establishment, they were eager to help, knowing that in exchange for making sure that President Trump was not going to be back in office, that these people in DC would relinquish control to the Chinese Communist Party. Okay? And the Washington establishment made this deal with the devil to allow China to take over our country. They paid the $400 million to Staple Street Capital, which owns Dominion voting machines. They set the adjudication rates on those machines that they now owned to default levels so that the ballots were hand counted by leftist operatives hired by the big unions. China then created and shipped millions of counterfeit ballots to the swing states that were counted illegally. Secretaries of state then changed laws unconstitutionally in order to count ballots after the legal time frames they were allowed to. And the judges were all either threatened or paid off to not look at the evidence. Then, the media whores, the big tech scumbags, the politicians at the state and federal levels were told to disparage, demean, marginalize, and discredit anyone who challenges the legitimacy of the outcome of the 2020 election. And all their plans were about to be upended on January 6th when millions of American patriots decided to pressure their elected officials by showing up in Washington in support of President Trump and against the stolen election, and pressuring those politicians that still had a spine and a love for this country to then challenge the results of the Electoral College and the electors, and kicking it to the state legislatures where Republicans had a big advantage and likely would have chosen President Trump over Biden as the legitimate winner. However, back to the beginning of the Fascist Bureau of Intimidation. The FBI had a plan for that as well. They set up the January 6 rallies, making sure that it ended in violence and that it scared, caused chaos, and therefore prompted the people that were going to challenge the results of the election to instead not do that, and then allowing the false certification of the 2020 election. There it is in a nutshell. Is that 100% accurate? I don't know. It's probably pretty damn accurate, because I have taken everything that we have seen so far as a blueprint, as an articulation, as a detailed description of what I believe transpired in this time frame. Could I be wrong? Yes, of course I could be wrong. The beginning of what I shared with you is absolutely truthful. The part in which I talk about how I believe this all unfolded is, of course, just my opinion. But how many times have I been wrong in the past? Close your eyes, what do you see? You don't see anything, because I haven't been wrong pretty much ever. Now, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you all the truth. And I think many of you that have been watching my show for years know that. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one. Hey, Josh Bernstein here, America's favorite bald badass. You know, you would have thought after being thrown off of social media that the attacks against me would stop. But you know what? They've only gotten worse. As a matter of fact, 10,000 a week sometimes from every left-wing organization and many countries around the world. So as a result of that, I have to put on the most extensive security possible on this website. So what does that mean for you, the user? It means that from time to time, unfortunately, you may have to jump through a few hoops to log in. But have no fear, you will be able to get in. A couple of suggestions. Number one, write down your username and password. Number two, please try to stay logged in as much as humanly possible. Number three, please make sure that you clear out your cookies and cache at least once a month. Number four, restart your device. And number five, try to use the Google browser as best you can. Remember, there are many, many people out there that do not want me to speak to all of you, and they are doing everything they can to make sure it doesn't happen. But I am fighting back, and I will continue to speak for all of you. God bless you.